All right. Hi there, everybody. First off, thank you very much for your most valuable time. My name is Charlie Demeray. I'm 36. I'm from San Diego, and I'm organizing this campaign with my close friend, Jake Glazer. Our goal is to raise enough money to change the life of a good man and dear friend in need, Chad Young. We would also like to tell a story worth telling, though. May it help and inspire others, whether you share a similar tale or not. Our cause is to transform one man's struggle into something beautiful, and in turn, hopefully something larger than any one person's story. For our ultimate goal is to convert negative experience and pain into positive change and healing for many. Over the last 10 years, Chad's life has been completely turned upside down by a debilitating onslaught of medical issues, including an undiagnosed inflammatory disease and a botched spinal fusion surgery, and a medical insurance system that's heavily bound in red tape. Best classified as an extreme test on the limits of one man's physical endurance and mental fortitude combined. But like a heroic, battle-hardened warrior from an ancient Greek tale, Chad's held his ground and found a way to dig deep and fight on through the belly of the beast in his 10-year odyssey to find his way back home. Before all that, though, a little bit about Chad and how we know him. Chad is 50 years old and lives in Hayden, Idaho. Always creative and always looking for new ideas to get excited about, Chad's a dreamer by heart. From wanting to start his own frozen foods line to the dozens of quirky yet genius invention ideas he's pitched to friends over the years, his bliss is being up in the mountains or out on the lake fishing off of a rowboat. He'll cook up a storm and make it rain. A former college baseball star that should have made it to the big leagues, a story for another time. A gem of a man with a heart of gold who never stops believing in himself or others. I met Chad while living up in North Idaho in 2003 when I was just 19. I was young, clueless, broke, and living with my best friend Jake. We were fresh out of high school and living on our own for the very first time. We were loud, party-oriented, to say the least, and had no real occupational skills. Yikes! A special time. A special time indeed. And Chad just happened to be our neighbor. And although we were obnoxious, he had mercy on us and would end up being the best neighbor we could have. Chad put us both to work and gave us both good paying jobs working for his successful custom landscaping company. He generously shared with us the hearty home cooked meals he and his girlfriend made nightly. He kept it real by giving us much needed advice in a time otherwise filled with pure dumbassery. He took us out into the woods and even brought us back to fish on the lake, spot wildlife in the mountains, and explore nature in true North Idaho fashion, a special place to experience for a couple of knuckleheads from California. It would just so happen, though, that over the years we would only become closer and remain lifelong friends. So let's get into it. Chad's been living with an inflammatory disease known as Behçet's disease for the last 10 years, diagnosed in October of 2020. The Behçet's went on undiagnosed for a decade, all the while wreaking havoc on Chad's body. Although Chad continually insisted and pleaded for more attention and care, his case would be severely mishandled by his medical network, and his pleas for help would often fall upon deaf ears. On top of that, Chad fell victim to a botched spinal fusion surgery he received in 2010, which is yet to be fixed to this day. Since then, Chad has lived with 4 severely herniated discs in his neck. The pain and discomfort is unbearable. Over the last decade, Chad would also face a gauntlet of other medical issues, including 3 total knee replacement surgeries, 4 hernias at once, which consisted of a double groin, a hiatal, and an umbilical hernia. Chad's labrum was partially severed during his double groin hernia repair surgery, yet another operation gone wrong, resulting in yet another unsuccessful repair surgery for the severed labrum, which would eventually tear again, finally remedied by hip surgery down the line. Colocutaneous fistula ulcer surgery as a result of the Behçet's and the severe intestinal inflammation that accompanies it. Total hip replacement surgery, esophagus repair surgery due to massive GI issues brought on by Behçet's, arthritis of the lower back, neuropathy of the hands and feet, and 10 years of continual physical therapy. Most of these injuries were either directly related to the botched neck surgery or the undiagnosed Behçet's in one form or another. Chad's body was losing structural integrity from the neck down, while the besets ran rampant with a nasty slew of symptoms and complications. Everything from arthritis, neuropathy, serious GI issues, chronic fatigue, migraines, aggressive ingrown hairs, and random skin sores. In hindsight, we now know that emotional stress and physical trauma are the biggest triggers that set off Behçet's disease inflammatory flare-ups. We had no idea at the time that the severe inflammatory symptoms were all related to each other and emanating from the same disease. Chad fought very hard to finally receive the diagnosis. It was an unnecessary uphill battle that lasted 10 years. Eventually, Chad lost his business and had to go on full disability to survive, which put him at the total mercy of Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. With very limited resources, though, Chad has fought his way from the bottom to the top of the medical insurance system to make his voice heard and receive the care he needs in his fight for survival and answers. As a side note, I would like to mention that at the beginning of 2016, Chad moved his mom into his home so he could care for her. Although he was in deep pain himself, there were no other options at the time. Her husband had passed away and her home was seized to pay off her husband's medical debt. She needed assistance and could no longer live on her own, but wasn't ready to go live at an assisted living facility. So Chad cared for his mother over the next 2 years. A loyal son and true warrior, even with his back against the wall, he was there to protect and take care of his mother, no matter what. That's just Chad. She is now happily transitioned and in a great senior home not far from him. Below is Chad's medical history timeline dating back to 2009. Now, in 2009 is when the very first symptoms of Behçet's popped up out of nowhere, in the form of abnormally aggressive ingrown hairs under the dermis layer of skin on Chad's face. These were incredibly invasive and upsetting to say the least. They would sidewind and burrow and would have to be surgically removed on an ongoing basis. At the time, Chad was deeply concerned, but everything else in his life was still on course. He was 39 years young, running a successful business, paying off his first house, and enjoying life to the fullest. Now, in 2010, while playing softball with friends, Chad took a ball to the neck and broke 4 vertebrae, a turning point injury in Chad's life, but he had no idea at the time. The repair surgery to fix the broken vertebrae was botched. The titanium plate that was used to fuse the vertebrae together was fused incorrectly and severely herniated the 4, 5, 6, and 7 vertebrae in Chad's neck. The surgeon who botched the surgery offered to repair with cadaver bones, but Chad declined the offer, having already lost faith in the surgeon, and instead, Chad asked for a second opinion. However, once Chad asked for a second opinion, the surgeon dropped Chad's case. Since then, there hasn't been a doctor willing to pick up Chad's case to try and repair the damage done by this life-altering surgery gone wrong. 2 years ago, top-ranking doctors at highly respected Harborview in Seattle looked at Chad's case and were shocked. They told him it was a barbaric operation. They refused to even attempt a correction surgery to try and pick up the pieces due to the liability alone. Chad has lived with the 4 severely herniated vertebrae for over 10 years now. In 2011, Chad had to have double knee replacement surgery. While still dealing with the neck surgery debacle and somehow trying to run his business, Chad's knees went out. The surgery was expected at some point in his life, but the rapid breakdown was accelerated by the inflammatory disease, which was flaring up like crazy at this point. And without proper upper body support, due to the damage done to Chad's neck, he was losing structural integrity as well, a vicious cycle that was just beginning. The undetected autoimmune disease fueled the fire that was already lit. And so, in 2011, due to debilitating pain and limited mobility, Chad was no longer able to run his landscaping business, and much to his displeasure had to accept assistance from the government to survive. This was supposed to be temporary. The plan was to get his neck fixed, get his knees fixed, and be back in the game, ready to rock, ASAP. This never happened, though. In 2012, Chad's body's lack of knee and neck support took its toll on his already hurting back. Scans revealed his L1 and L2 vertebrae were bulging. with an additional stress fracture between his L4 and L5 vertebrae. Chad's lower back was becoming arthritic and his hands and feet were getting hit with neuropathy from the nerve damage between his L4 and L5. This was incredibly upsetting. Chad had become deeply concerned for his future and knew the road ahead was a steep one. By 2013, the undetected Behçet's was flaring up like crazy. Chad was experiencing a wide array of symptoms, but he still had no idea the issues were related to one another. Symptoms ranged from a multitude of serious gastrointestinal issues, random sores that took months to heal, migraines, fatigue, and those damned ingrown hairs constantly attacking Chad's face. His handsome face forever scarred. By this point, Chad was on full Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and only 44 years old. A major blow to a previously healthy, motivated, fit, and completely self-made working man. And in 2015, Chad had to have a colocutaneous fistula ulcer surgery, for he had an ulcer so inflamed that it extended through the entire wall of his lower intestine. This was the Behçet's flaring up, still undetected and taking its toll. Chad continued to remain in the dark, doing his best to stay positive though, but truthfully, he was in a deep depression at this point. And in 2016, Chad would need yet another knee replacement for his left knee, just 5 years after it had already been replaced. His knee had become unglued by the inflammatory Behçet's and the physical tasks that basic day-to-day life required. Post-surgery physical therapy for the knee was canceled. Chad had a whopping 4 hernias, 2 groin, 1 umbilical, and 1 hiatal. This effectively disabled his mobility, so knee therapy was halted and never finished. Later that year, Chad would get surgery for his double groin hernia. During surgery, somehow something went wrong, and Chad came out of the operation with a partially severed labrum. This was only determined after lots of pain and ultimately an MRI demand from Chad. And in 2017, he received repair surgery for his severed labrum, but by the end of the year, it would tear. Chad's immune system was just too inflamed. His body was attacking itself instead of healing itself. Still a mystery at the time as to why. The labrum issue wouldn't be resolved for another 2 years until it was finally remedied via a total hip replacement surgery in December of 2020. So in 2018, Chad continued to push forward and advocate for himself more than ever, but it was getting harder and harder to stay positive. His neck and back were on fire. At that point, he had been living with the repercussions from his botched spinal fusion surgery for 8 years. His body was in a continual state of trauma, looping back into and triggering the inflammatory disease. His undiagnosed Behçet's was full-fledged and flaring up like never before. So what was causing all of this random inflammation? It was still a complete mystery to Chad. It was maddening. He begged the question to doctors, but most seemed to be burnt out, unconcerned, low on time, and all too integrated into the dead-end system that so many in need have already been consumed by. The Behçet's was going nuclear, and nobody seemed to care. Chad's stomach had been flaring up so bad that his teeth were destroyed by his heartburn. He had migraines, eye aches, chronic fatigue, giant muscle knots that would appear out of nowhere and lock him up. Between his neck, his back, his hip, his knees, and his aggressive inflammation, he was literally hurting from head to toe. Callous doctors and nurses didn't believe the ingrown hairs were as aggressive as Chad insisted they were. He was literally begging for help, for those dreaded hairs drove Chad mad more than anything. Doctors and nurses refused to listen to Chad and told him he was a hypochondriac instead. There were treatments available to treat the skin issue, but Chad was never approved. Instead, they would notate on Chad's file that he was delusional because he insisted there was something deeper going on. They also notated that he was a drug abuser because of the way he looked with his marked face and skin. Not only an insult, but completely absurd and borderline malpractice. This note damaged and hindered Chad's credibility in a time when he needed to be heard most. He believed he was being punished for rocking the boat, and for his absolute insistence while actively speaking up and refusing to go with the program.